Chapter 26, Cairns and Beyond. We drove into Cairns. The city wasn't a city like Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane. It was small, provincial, cute and homey. There was no hectic hustle and bustle to be found here. It was slow and quiet. Meg and Sandra were mainly shopping for souvenirs again. I indulged in the joys of a food court. Food courts were something that hadn't really arrived in Germany at the time. Now you find them at big malls too. But back then it was something wondrous to me. In Cairns I received my second parking ticket. This time the angle wasn't the problem, but the time. I had parked 15 minutes too long and should pay $20 for it. I remembered the tip of the Byron Bay police officer. Needless to say, I left this ticket unpaid too. Perhaps I should not go back to Queensland. If they still have me on file and also charge for interest, then I owe them a small fortune by now. We found a campground just outside of Cairns, kind of above it on a hill toward the rainforest. It was free and it was brand new. There were luxurious compost toilets and showers. Geckos everywhere too, and they are for good luck, so we stayed. We had to take a ferry over a really big river to visit Daintree National Park and Cape Tribulation. Of course, we were sold on a crocodile cruise because we finally wanted to get up close to these Jurassic-looking creatures in the safety of a metal boat and a tour guide who we hoped would be a relative of Mick Dundee. We saw two enormous female crocs. They were lazy and had probably just eaten. I can't say I was sorry about that. We saw quite a few snakes, lots of birds, and the most peculiar fish. These fish stuck their heads out of the river and spat water like little fountains. After the cruise, we followed the sign to the ice cream company, where we imagined we'd find mountains of this cold, delicious treat. Ideally, the Alps rebuilt an ice cream with more flavors than fish in the sea. But what we found wasn't according to our expectations. The ice cream company was a small house, a shed really. There, a few locals were making ice cream using tropical fruit they found in the forest. They had whopping 4 flavors, each more peculiar than the next. Have you ever tried or even heard of roasted wattle seed? It doesn't exactly fill your ice cream loving heart with confidence and joy, but the 3 of us ordered a sample cup and got all 4 flavors for $4. It was a big cup too. What can I say? Not only was this the most scenic and stunning ice cream place ever, but the funny sounding flavors actually tasted great. Wattle seed was my favorite, and therefore it is the only flavor I can remember the name of. It had a nutty, chocolatey taste, hard to describe. It perfectly satisfied my cravings for chocolate without being chocolate, if that makes any sense at all. After that, we made camp at Noa Beach. The campground was self-registration, which in our case meant we would not pay until we got caught. In 90 degrees Fahrenheit and about 90% humidity, we decided the only right thing was a hot chocolate. Sometimes one needs a hot chocolate. There's just nothing else that can create a homey feeling like hot chocolate. Perhaps hot chocolate drunk while wearing big, soft, fluffy socks. But that would have taken it too far. We had to stay cool enough to stay sane and not jump in the water somewhere out of utter madness induced by heart stroke. Swimming in the northeast of Australia isn't for the faint-hearted. You can't go in the ocean because of the box jellyfish, and you can't go in the rivers because of the crocodiles. The box jellyfish is one of the deadliest creatures on this planet. There were certain beaches that put up nets through which the jellyfish could not fit, so you could swim within the netted area. Trouble is, if you swim up too close to the net, the tentacles still fit through and can take you out just the same. And the tentacles are up to 10 feet long. If you get tangled up in one of those, you have as little as 2 minutes to live. That isn't very long if you aren't a mayfly. And of course, crocodiles aren't much fun either. They are so well hidden that you only spot them once you are in the river. Not good. We mainly chose to do hikes in the rainforest rather than beach days for obvious reasons. But it was rather sad we could not cool ourselves down in the tempting-looking water. One of the rare safe places to swim was the Imogen Creek swimming hole. Why it was safe and not populated by crocodiles, I do not know. I didn't ask either, I just wanted to believe it regardless. Imogen Creek is so beautiful. One of those picture-perfect places you can imagine ads being filmed at. The river is so clear that you can see every pebble in it, and it is lined by thick, lush, green rainforest. You can see the bare roots of the trees dipping into the water, looking like pieces of art. There are small islands in the river made of perfectly rounded stones. They look so smooth that you just want to caress them. There are vines hanging from the trees. When you look up, you see a canopy of all colors of green, which reflect in the river water and give it a shimmering emerald glow. There are tall ferns, bushes, and trees, which all blend into one wall of green, a jungle paradise. The sunlight shoots through the leaves, rays which give the place a magical aura. The last few days with Meg and Sandra were spent in and around Kuranda. We enjoyed the atmosphere of the town, the exotic rainforest around it. We went from campground to campground. One had the best shower, the next the better toilet, the next was free. Often we went to the shower campground in the dark, showered before we were discovered, and went again. Of course, that way one could not see which parts of the leg were already shaved and which wasn't. Not that anyone looked. But keeping up hygienic standards was important. You never know. Perhaps a life-changing moment was around the corner, and one cannot change lives with shaggy-looking legs, that's for sure. I had started collecting oddly shaped seeds, bark, and wooden-looking tree fruits. I have no idea what they are, but some of them are still on my bookshelf to this day. A few of them I oiled to make them shiny like pearls. Others I painted. For days I did nothing else but collecting all the things I could use as canvas. The camp was getting quite crowded. I became a hoarder of all things that came from trees. Sandra's last morning was here. We heard the tent rustle and the car keys jingle the Sandra way one last time. It was the last time we didn't have to build up the gas cooker because Sandra could not wait for breakfast while we were still snoozing. I would miss her. By the time all of us were up, Sandra had made breakfast and was busy chasing chickens who came out of nowhere and spread the contents of our food bags in a 20-square-foot radius. They created more havoc in our camp than any dingo or fierce kangaroo had ever done. Turns out it is chicken one should fear. We drove Sandra to the airport and said our farewells. And that was that. Our travel trio was no more. Meg and I were sad, but to our delight we discovered that the airport had a shower. Who would have thought? Needless to say, we monopolized the shower for quite some time. Too bad it was cold. Meg and I decided to go and see Lake Morris, the water supply of Cairns. It's funny, because one can also swim and boat on it. Strange to think it is used as drinking water too. Lake Morris was ugly that day, as murky as our mood. Neither of us felt like swimming or hiking or anything at all, really. We drove back to Kuranda along a very windy road. Malcolm the Falcon's brakes got so hot they stank. I feared we would not make it, but we did. Upon arrival at our campground, we sat ourselves down amongst my tree-part collection and decided a hot cocoa would brighten the spirits. We sat and talked until nightfall and felt much better for it. It turned out we should not have waited until dark to go and use the bathroom, though. The most enormous spider I had seen thus far had built her web right in the front door. Neither Meg nor I felt brave enough to disturb the hand-sized creature, so we decided the forest would be our bathroom. Nothing we weren't used to, but a pity not being able to use the perfectly fine facilities. We had gotten rid of spiders before, and geckos and all sorts of creepy crawly things. None was that size, though. The spider had won. Not for the first time we wondered if we should write a toilet guide to Australia, complete with tips on how to enter in case of wildlife. It would probably be a hit. Meg had only 3 days left by now. We decided to go diving. Cairns was, after all, a mecca for divers from all around the globe. I only had $80 on my account now, still waiting for my paycheck from Origin Energy and the last installment of my German money to arrive. Nevertheless, I spent it on a dive day. Life is too short. I decided to drive back down to Byron Bay after Meg had left, even though that had never been my initial plan. But how many of my plans had come to fruition? None. It didn't matter if one more got changed. I felt there was more to be learned from Otto. Whether that was right or wrong is hard to tell in hindsight, but back then I felt it was the only decision I could make. On the day of our dive at the famous Great Barrier Reef, we had to get up as early as the nasty chickens and drive to the beautiful harbor. We parked Malcolm and fed the parking meter, which spat out a wrong ticket for 3 hours only. But we would be gone for the entire day, and neither of us had any more money for another parking ticket. In fact, we were both completely and utterly broke. When desperate, start swearing in German. We did. When an older gentleman walked by and asked, "What's the matter, girls?" We explained that the machine had wrongly given us this ticket, and he said, "Bloody Germans," in a loving sort of way. As we turned to leave, he pulled out his wallet and bought us a parking ticket for the day for $5. "I traveled without money too," he said. We did not want to take it, but he insisted, saying, "For me it's nothing, but for you it'll make your day. No worries, this is Australia." And off he went before we could decline his kind gesture. This gentleman did make our day. It is encounters like this that make me believe in the good of humanity. But Meg and I felt we had to give something back. We were able to sell our wrong ticket for $3, so we went searching for the gentleman to pay him at least part of the money back. As we found him sitting in a cafe, he laughed out loud and said, "No, girls, buy yourselves a drink." Elated by the mentality and happiness of this man, we went on our diving trip, feeling utterly fabulous about the state of the world. It was a great place to be. We were late for our boat by now and had to run to the other side of the harbor. However, we did make it and got rushed on board. There we received our gear and were taught how to put on the suit, mask, oxygen bottle, and fins. The outer Great Barrier Reef was our destination. First, we went out with snorkels for a look around. It was even more colorful than the inner reef that we had admired around the Whitsunday Islands. The fish were bigger too, and it seemed even busier down here. After the snorkeling, it got serious. We put our diving gear on and were met in the water by a diving instructor who ran us through the functions, do's and don'ts. We were a group of about 6 people. The instructor wanted to take each of us single down to the ocean floor below, where we were to wait until the entire group was present. I was first. He took me down into the deep. It was dark and not very pretty. Here he left me, diving up again to bring the next person down. A big fish emerged out of nowhere. In a panic, I paddled up to the surface again, where the instructor laughed at my reaction. He took me down again straight away, no mercy. In my head, I started reciting Goethe's Der Zauberlehrling, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, in German to distract myself from the irrational fear in my heart. Good, the sorcerer, my old master, left me here alone today. Now his spirits for a change my own wishes shall obey. Having memorized what to say and do with my powers of will, I can do something witching too. Go, I say, go on your way, do not tarry, water carry, let it flow abundantly, and prepare a bath for me. My education was good for something after all. When our little posse was complete, we sat on the ocean floor. A sea turtle joined us and let us scratch her shell for a bit. We stroked sea urchins too. Peculiar creatures they are. We tried out swimming and moving in our diving gear and slowly got used to the feel. Lunchtime came quick and we all went up to the surface again, where I felt much happier than under the water. I did not feel at ease submerged in the ocean with 20 feet of water above me. I wolfed down my lunch as if it was the last thing I'd ever eat. For some reason this fear had not left me. Diving wasn't my thing, it seemed, but I wanted to give it another good go. The boat sailed to a different part of the reef and anchored before it. The reef was about a quarter of a mile away from the boat. We had to swim over because no boat can go any closer. As we stood at the railing looking over toward the reef, we could not see much. Above the water it merely looks like a sandbank in the middle of the ocean. We swam over as a group, all our gear on us. The ocean around us was so deep that all the color had drained from it. It was like swimming in black liquid. But as a group and with the reef as a goal in our mind, that wasn't a problem. Soon it appeared in front of us, the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef system, composed of over 2,900 individual reefs and 900 islands, stretching for over 2,300 kilometers over an area of approximately 344,400 square kilometers. What we saw was a minuscule part of it all. Life here seems more lively, colors more colorful. In this World Heritage Site, as well as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It is a World Heritage Site as well as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. When you are immersed in it, you can truly understand why. It is famous for a reason. I can hardly describe the breathtaking beauty of it. I started following around a friendly sea turtle who seemed to be my tour guide through the reef, showing off her home to me. I swam through towers of coral, schools of fish in all colors making their way from one side of what could have been a crossroad to the next. Everything seemed to follow some sort of order down here. It must have been a couple of hours before I realized I was all alone at the reef. The others had swum back to the boat already, and it was time I made my way there too. I said goodbye to my turtle friend and went to the edge of the reef. From there, I simply had to swim over to the boat. But standing on the edge of the bright, beautiful reef, I found it nigh impossible to leap over that edge and into the great, big, dark ocean again. Imagine yourself as an ant on the kitchen counter, standing right at the edge, looking down at the immeasurable deep drop. It is scary. I knew I could not fall because it was water all around me and I would float, but rationality is not my strong suit. The thought of leaving the friendly reef for the scary depths of the sea with humongous fish lurking in it was paralyzing. I saw Meg's head bobbing on the waves. She must have forgotten the time also. I yelled out to her and she saw me. It took all my bravery and more recitals of the Sorcerer's Apprentice to finally swim over the edge of the ocean's kitchen counter. Come on now, old broom, get dressed. These old rags will do just fine. You're a slave in any case, and today you will be mine. May you have 2 legs and a head on top. Take the bucket, quick, hurry, do not stop. Go, I say, go on your way. Do not tarry, water carry, let it flow abundantly, and prepare a bath for me. I was so relieved to reach Meg. Together we swam back to the boat. This was Meg's last day in Australia, and what a glorious end to her trip it had been. A few weeks back we had both wondered what Queensland would look like, and now we were at the end of our joint adventures. With a heavy heart I brought Meg to the airport, and that was that. Traveling was a constant saying goodbye, I found. It was never nice, but got easier every time. Traveling also was a constant hello. Back at the campground, I met an older lady with her camper van. As we were neighbors now, I went over to say hi. And as if life was playing jokes on me, she was German, and her name was Regina, like my mum. Regina had lived in Australia for 30 years already. Recently she had decided to spend her autumn days of life traveling around this beautiful continent. I could only applaud that. She had made German bread, so we sat and ate Abendbrot together. Translated, it means evening bread, but has more the meaning of dinner. Often in Germany you'd have bread for dinner instead of a warm meal. The next morning Regina asked me to go and do some shopping in Cairns for her, because she did not want to move her big clunky van. As I had nothing better to do, I gladly obliged. We spent the next few days together. Regina must have seen me as a surrogate grandchild, because she spoiled me like only grandparents can. She cooked decadent meals for me, so I had a Sunday roast with German red cabbage and dumplings at our rainforest location about 9,000 miles from home. I spent my days painting. She knitted and made endless cups of tea for us, each with a coconut biscuit at the side. Regina did not like walking much, so I went on my own explorations and brought back finds and stories. We were an odd couple. I had started advertising my travels back to Byron Bay in the hopes of finding someone to share the ride and the costs. Quite soon I found a guy who wanted to join in to Airlie Beach. That was 470 miles that I didn't have to go alone, so I decided to take him with me. Regina packed a big lunch packet for the trip, and we said our goodbyes. She was sad to see me go. She had been traveling on her own, and I knew too well how lonely it can feel some days. The guy was so boring that I have forgotten his name. He slept for 300 miles. At least I didn't have to make small talk. So once again I drove south, a direction I had not planned. I should have been on my way to Darwin, but went the opposite way. Finally, the guy woke up and offered to drive. I was hoping was my turn to sleep now, but instead he talked for the rest of the way how he drove from Sydney to Byron Bay when he was 18 years old, and how it took him 8 months because he surfed every single beach along the way. Why he thought I was interested, I have no idea. Arriving in Airlie Beach that evening, I was glad to be rid of him, and went to each backpacker hostel to find new rideshare for the rest of the way. There was a girl who wanted to join all the way to Byron Bay, but wasn't ready to leave for another 2 days. I decided to wait for her. She seemed like nice company. Her name was Becca. I cannot remember where she was from. The first sign that she was a nice person was that she smuggled me into her hostel room, where I spent the night in a spare bed. Such luxury. The next morning I snuck out before reception opened. No one ever knew I had slept there. Becca went sailing for the day, and I drove to a national park nearby, where I sat under a tree pretty much all day long, writing, painting, listening to birds, taking naps, and doing a lot of nothing. In the afternoon I met Becca again, and we drove out of Airlie Beach to camp at a free roadside campground. She was used to better accommodations, I could tell, but one night in a tent would not kill her. It was a loud night. Lots of trucks went past, and when they quieted down, the birds started chirping. With little sleep and without breakfast, we started our long drive south. I still had no money in my account, so I lived off what the last rideshare had paid and what Becca was contributing. At a gas station, I filled up the car and bought a breakfast sandwich for $2. Financially, that $2 hurt a lot, but even more so because it tasted dreadful. I wished I hadn't given in to my growling stomach. We made another stop in Rockhampton, then we drove all the way through to Byron Bay. We arrived there at midnight after 750 miles. I was exhausted. We both stayed at Otto's home for the night. He wasn't home, but his daughter Mila was. I had planned to drive from Cairns back to Byron in 4 days, but I had only needed 2. Never had I driven so many miles in one day. I was back at the place where my spiritual journey to another culture had begun. I wondered what would await me next. The plans I had for going around the entire country were given up by now. I wanted to believe Otto when he said the spirits had led me here and would guide me along the path they had chosen for me. At the time, I felt that my reason for this whole journey to Australia was here, that I would find an epiphany, and that all the puzzle pieces that were my life would make sense and come together in Byron Bay. I would find the meaning of life at 24 years of age in a hippie town. Are you laughing yet? Because I sure am, as I'm writing this. I believed it. At least I thought I would find purpose. Leading the glorious gypsy-like existence that I did had charm and was certainly addictive, but having no purpose can leave you unsatisfied no matter how much beauty presents itself to you on a daily basis.